They laughed when I tripped in front of the entire boardroom, but that laughter will be the first thing they remember when their empire collapses. That's how it started. A single moment of humiliation, a cruel smile, and a lifetime of underestimation. My name is Sophie Lane, and I learned early on that the people who call you weak are often the ones who fear your strength. The person responsible was Cassandra Reed, my former colleague and supposed friend. She had been charming, ambitious, and manipulative, all the qualities that the corporate world rewarded. Cassandra and I had started together at Stellar Innovations, a tech company known for high-stakes pitches and cutthroat politics. Initially, we had been allies, brainstorming late nights, sharing client leads, and covering for each other when deadlines collided. But alliances built on convenience are fragile. Slowly, I noticed her cracks, snide remarks disguised as jokes, subtle interruptions in meetings, and the occasional accidental deletion of files I had spent weeks perfecting. I brushed them off at first, rationalizing that maybe I was overreacting. The turning point came during the annual investor showcase. I had spent months preparing a presentation that could attract multi-million-dollar funding for our newest AI project. My slides were polished, my pitch rehearsed, every statistic verified. But as I stepped up to the podium, Cassandra leaned over to a senior manager and whispered something inaudible to the audience. In an instant, the live demo I had tested hundreds of times froze. The screen went blank. My notes disappeared. Panic rippled through the room, all eyes turned to me. I could feel the humiliation crawl over me like ice. Laughter from certain corners of the room stung, but what hurt the most was the silence of others who had once called me a trusted colleague. When the demo finally restarted, it was too late, the moment was lost, and so was the confidence of the investors. Cassandra's smile gleamed under the spotlight. She had succeeded in making me appear incompetent. I left the room that day with my chest tight and my vision blurred, not from tears, but from the cold realization that the people I had trusted had turned against me. I had been made small, a puppet in a cruel game orchestrated by someone I had called a friend. Yet even as I drove home, a thought began to crystallize in my mind. Humiliation can be temporary, but revenge, when planned meticulously, is permanent. I didn't yet know how I would strike back, but I understood one thing clearly: this wasn't the end. Something dark and deliberate had been set in motion, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something long buried: anticipation. They thought they could humiliate me. They had no idea their own downfall was quietly taking shape. The day after the showcase, the office felt smaller, suffocating, like every corner was watching me. I couldn't tell if it was paranoia or the truth, but something about Stellar Innovations had shifted. Cassandra's laughter from the gala still echoed in my mind, and small, subtle signs began to pile up, each one like a warning bell. Files I had meticulously organized started disappearing from the shared drives. Projects I had led were reassigned without explanation, their credit subtly redirected. During meetings, I noticed Cassandra leaning closer to the managers, whispering in tones that suggested secrets I wasn't part of. My ideas were interrupted, dismissed, or forgotten altogether, while hers received praise for no apparent reason. Even the office culture, which I once considered neutral, began to feel hostile. Colleagues avoided eye contact when I walked by, and some conversations would abruptly end as I approached. Julia, my closest ally in the firm, began giving me hesitant glances. One day she whispered, I think she's planning something. I don't know, but be careful. Small inconsistencies appeared everywhere. Emails I had sent to clients returned with unexpected replies, and I began noticing subtle discrepancies in project reports. At first, I dismissed them, maybe a clerical error, I told myself. But the unease grew. A sense of manipulation hovered over every interaction, every decision. Then came the most unsettling moment. I overheard Cassandra on the phone, speaking in a low, controlled tone that sent chills down my spine. Make sure Sophie doesn't get the Carson project. If she pitches, it needs to fail. I froze. Her voice, the clarity of intent, and the calculated precision of her words confirmed what I had feared. The showcase was not a fluke. The humiliation had been orchestrated. She had planned every misstep, every glitch, every moment designed to make me look incapable in front of investors and colleagues. I walked to my desk, my hands shaking, my chest tight. The betrayal cut deeper than the showcase itself. It was personal, deliberate, and suffocating. The office I had once considered a battlefield of ideas was now a minefield of traps, carefully laid by someone who had once called me a friend. Sitting at my desk, staring at the glowing screen, I realized how isolated I had become. I had been cautious, kind, and cooperative, qualities that had made me a target. Every smile I offered, every moment I had trusted someone like Cassandra, had been twisted against me. And as I looked at the calendar, I noticed something that made my blood run cold: an internal audit scheduled for next week, with Cassandra listed as the lead. She would have full access to everything I had built, my ideas, my client contacts, my reputation. The thought was suffocating. The danger was no longer subtle. Something deliberate, precise, and ruthless was coming, and this time, I would not be a victim. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the stomach, sudden, brutal, and undeniable. It was a Thursday morning when the truth finally came to light. I had been double-checking project reports for the Carson account, the very account Cassandra had whispered about during that phone call I'd overheard. As I sifted through spreadsheets and client emails, I realized the horrifying scope. She had not just sabotaged the showcase, she had been systematically erasing my contributions, diverting funds, and submitting my work as her own for months. Every pitch I had led, every client I had nurtured, every contract I had painstakingly crafted had been rewritten under her name. Bonuses I had earned, commission checks, and even promotions that should have been mine were quietly redirected to her. The financial implications alone were staggering: millions in lost revenue credited to someone else. My professional reputation, painstakingly built over years, was now in tatters. I felt disbelief first. My mind refused to accept it. I replayed every meeting, every handshake, every congratulatory pat on the back I had shared with her. Could it really be that every kind word and gesture of collaboration had been a trap? Had I truly been nothing more than a pawn in her game all along? Then came the heartbreak. Not just the loss of recognition or money, but the realization that the person I had trusted, someone I had confided in, celebrated successes with, and even defended when others doubted her, had orchestrated my humiliation with meticulous precision. Cassandra had weaponized my kindness and patience, proving that betrayal often wears the mask of friendship. Anger surged, sharp and unrelenting. My hands trembled, my vision blurred. The office, once familiar, now felt like a cage of deceit. Colleagues passed by with smiles that felt hollow, unaware or complicit in the manipulation. I wanted to scream, to confront her publicly, but I knew that uncalculated rage would play into her hands. And yet, beneath the storm of shock and fury, a single thought anchored me: she had underestimated me. She assumed my kindness and patience meant weakness, that my composure signified submission. But she had made one fatal error: she had revealed her strategy. Every email, every altered document, every subtle lie, it all left traces. And those traces were now mine to follow. I leaned back in my chair, fists clenched, staring at the empty office. My mind raced, trying to piece together the magnitude of her deceit. She had humiliated me publicly, undermined me financially, and threatened my career. And yet, in that overwhelming moment, clarity began to emerge. I would not break. I would not beg. I would not retreat. The question now wasn't if I would act. It was how. And as I stared at her smug photo on the office bulletin board, the words echoed in my mind. They tried to humiliate me, but every empire built on lies has a weakness. And I am about to find hers. The days after discovering Cassandra's betrayal were heavy with doubt and anger. Each morning I walked into Stellar Innovations. I felt the weight of unseen eyes, of colleagues who either feared her or were quietly complicit. I couldn't trust anyone completely. My work, my reputation, my very identity had been stolen, and every move I made seemed shadowed by her manipulations. But despair only lasts so long before it transforms into something more dangerous: focus. The turning point came unexpectedly. I was reviewing old project files for a minor client when I noticed something curious: a series of encrypted emails Cassandra had accidentally CC'd me on. At first glance, they seemed mundane: meeting requests, client confirmations, but a careful read revealed a web of deception. She had been coordinating with external consultants, forging approvals, and even creating fake memos to cover up her theft. It wasn't just petty sabotage, it was premeditated, systematic, and audacious. I realized then that her confidence, the same smugness that had crushed me in the showcase, was based on her belief that I would never fight back. She had underestimated patience, intelligence, and observation. And that was her first mistake. I called Evan, the quiet analyst who had always been observant, and showed him the emails. Together, we mapped out a timeline of every manipulated contract, every misattributed project, every opportunity she had stolen. The pattern was clear: she thrived on invisibility and silence, exploiting trust as a weapon. Something shifted in me as we worked through the evidence. I felt a spark ignite, not of rage, but of clarity. My mind, once clouded by humiliation, now buzzed with strategy. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't weak. I was informed, prepared, and ready. The transformation wasn't dramatic in appearance. No shouting, no storming offices. Instead, it was in the way I sat taller, organized my files meticulously, and began planting the seeds of what would become my counterstrike. Every detail mattered. Every ally, every document, every overlooked email was a piece of a larger plan. That night, I stood by the office window, looking at the city lights, the hum of traffic below echoing like the pulse of opportunity. Cassandra's laughter, once so intimidating, now sounded distant, almost irrelevant. I whispered to myself, barely audible but resolute: they tried to humiliate me. They thought my kindness and patience were weakness. But I am not who they think I am. I will not falter. I will rise. I will win. And in that quiet moment, the decision crystallized: I would not wait for fate to intervene. I would orchestrate it. Cassandra's reign of deceit was about to meet a precision it had never anticipated. This wasn't revenge yet, it was awakening. And soon, the world would notice the difference. Revenge, I learned, is less about drama and more about choreography. Every move must be timed. Every witness must be placed. Mistake one wrong step and the whole thing collapses. So I treated this like the most important project of my life. Step 1: lock the proof. Evan and I started by creating ironclad copies of everything: the encrypted emails Cassandra CC'd by mistake, server backups showing file edits, timestamps proving who uploaded what and when, and the audit trail showing redirected invoices tied to her accounts. I printed hard copies, notarized a selection, and hid duplicates in 3 separate locations: a safety deposit box, a lawyer's secure drop, and my mother's attic, in a battered novel no one would touch. Redundancy is the enemy of erasure. Step 2: quiet allies. Julia agreed to be our inside recorder. She would note meeting attendees and times, and keep an eye on who accessed what on the shared drives. Marcus, the ex-client who'd complained about unexpected charges, provided a sworn statement about billing irregularities. Evan pulled keycard footage showing Cassandra entering restricted areas at odd hours. Each ally was careful, no dramatic declarations, only documented facts. We all had reasons to be discreet: careers, fear, leverage. Discretion kept them willing. Step 3: Test the water. I fed small, anonymous leads to compliance and to a senior partner who had grown suspicious of Cassandra's meteoric rise. Not lies, facts framed as questions. That forced them to poke, to make notes, to request internal logs. Watching them overreact would create the very footsteps we needed. Step 4: Build the channel. I briefed a journalist I trusted with an embargoed package, documents, witnesses lined up, and a clear timeline. I also engaged a corporate solicitor, a quiet woman who kept her eyes on procedure, not headlines. Legal pressure plus a controlled public release would be a pincer movement. Regulators would have paperwork to act on as the story hit feeds. Step 5: Lay the trap. Everything hinged on synchronization. At 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, Evan would hand the solicitor the compiled packet that would trigger subpoenas. At that exact moment, the journalist would publish. Panic in the boardroom, freeze from the banks, headlines in every inbox. The firm would have no time to spin. All the while, Cassandra carried on as if nothing was wrong. She posted a triumphant photo from a client dinner, laughed with colleagues, and congratulated herself at the firm's Slack channel. Her confidence made her careless, the perfect mask for a fall. I rehearsed contingencies until they felt like muscle memory. Backups were double-checked. Julia knew what to say if pulled into HR. Marcus had his statement notarized. My lawyer's number sat at the top of my phone. The night before, I sat alone in my apartment with the final binder on my lap, a sealed, weighty thing that held every misdeed in neat, unforgiving order. I closed the binder, feeling the silence press in like a held breath. At 8:59 a.m., I powered on my laptop, thumb hovering over the email address labeled press, embargoed. Outside, the city began its morning rush, oblivious. Inside, the world I'd known at Stellar Innovations waited on a single click. I exhaled, and then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number: "He's at the gala tonight. 2 seats." Perfect timing. My finger trembled above the mouse. The plan was set. The traps were baited. All that remained was one move. The morning arrived with an electric tension, almost cinematic in its inevitability. At 9 a.m., the solicitor's email went out, subpoenas served on Stellar Innovations. Within minutes, compliance officers flooded inboxes, requesting logs, approvals, and documentation for every project Cassandra had touched. Simultaneously, the journalist published the story, a precise, irrefutable timeline of deceit. Headlines screamed, "Corporate sabotage exposed. How one woman's talent was stolen for personal gain." Screens lit up with proof, emails, contracts, client confirmations, each one bearing Cassandra's fingerprints and her pattern of manipulation. Cassandra, walked into her office that morning unaware, sipping coffee and scrolling through the company chat. Her eyes widened as notifications multiplied, partners questioning her, clients demanding explanations, and HR scheduling urgent meetings. Investors were already calling, alarmed by the public disclosure. Panic replaced her usual smug confidence. The humiliation was public. Screens in the office displayed the journalist's piece, complete with screenshots of her altered documents. Slack channels buzzed with disbelief. Colleagues whispered in hushed, sympathetic tones, many of them finally seeing the truth. The laughter that once echoed at my expense had returned, now directed at her. Legally, Cassandra was in free fall. The solicitor had prepared every filing meticulously, proof of falsified documents, email manipulations, and financial misappropriations. Banks froze the accounts tied to projects she had stolen. Contracts were suspended. Investors demanded immediate audits, and the company's board could no longer shield her. She attempted to defend herself in front of a conference call, flustered and stammering. Every word fell flat, the evidence was unassailable. Each attempt to shift blame or charm her way out only highlighted her recklessness. I watched from the shadows, feeling neither glee nor cruelty, only the satisfaction of balance restored. By the afternoon, the board had suspended her with immediate effect. Deals she had hoped to claim were redirected under my oversight. Her empire, meticulously built on deceit and theft, crumbled piece by piece. The same colleagues who had once whispered about my weakness now sought guidance, some even congratulating me quietly. I stood outside Stellar Innovations, the city lights reflecting off the glass facade. The world was moving, oblivious to most of the details, yet the impact was complete. Cassandra exited the building alone, shoulders slumped, eyes darting nervously as journalists filmed the scene. She was small, stripped of the confidence and control she had wielded so arrogantly. And in that moment, I understood the truth. They had tried to humiliate me, believing my patience and composure were weaknesses. But weakness is an illusion. Strength often hides behind silence, observation, and patience. The city bustled around me as I walked away, calm, composed, victorious. They tried to humiliate me, but now they are the headline of my victory. Months passed, but the reverberations of Cassandra's downfall lingered through the corridors of Stellar Innovations. The company reorganized, partners recalibrated, and investors quietly assessed the damage. Cassandra, once untouchable and untiringly confident, now moved like a ghost through hallways where she had once commanded attention. Legal proceedings continued, but the outcome was inevitable: her credibility destroyed, her finances frozen, her career irreparably harmed. Meanwhile, I rebuilt not just my reputation but my power. Clients who had once overlooked me now sought my counsel, impressed by my professionalism and poise under pressure. Former colleagues who had doubted me reached out, acknowledging the dedication and talent they had underestimated. I launched Sophie Lane Consulting, a firm emphasizing integrity and transparency, a stark contrast to the deceit I had endured. The contracts I had fought for, once hijacked, were now safely under my leadership, flourishing as I had always envisioned. Yet the most satisfying justice was quiet and inevitable. Cassandra had mocked my patience, my kindness, and my composure, branding them as weakness. Those very traits, observation, meticulous planning, and unwavering restraint, had orchestrated her downfall. She had underestimated the power of the person she had humiliated. One evening, as I walked past the now infamous conference room where the showcase had gone wrong, I glimpsed Cassandra through the glass, meeting with a lawyer, eyes cast downward. She had once been the predator, now she was a spectator to the world she had tried to control. A subtle smile touched my lips. Balance had been restored. I whispered to myself, letting the words carry weight, they tried to humiliate me, but the hand that once pushed me down now trembles under the weight of my justice. To you watching, have you ever faced betrayal that cut deep? Have you been underestimated, dismissed, or humiliated for your patience, kindness, or loyalty? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you rose, how you fought back, and how you reclaimed your power. Speech Balloon. And if this story resonated, make sure to subscribe for more tales of resilience, cunning, and poetic justice. Because sometimes, the quietest storms are the ones that change everything, and the ones who underestimated you become the headline of your victory. Glowing star.